Okay. So today we are going to do is SAR, that is Search and Rescue Operations. So it is part of your response mechanism in disaster management. One of the very important step to overcome or to reduce the losses that is going to happen after the mark of the disaster. Are you able to see my screen? Okay. So the basic objective of SAR is to what reduce the losses. So search and rescue operations require um, careful planning and some very well trained professionals and personals to uh, help search and rescue the victims during disaster or aftermath of the disaster. All right. The objective of these search and rescue operations are greatly to reduce the number of losses of life, shorter the amount of time of the impact of the disaster, and reduce or rescue lightly trapped victims from from the first search, because after, when the search and rescue operations is initiated, there's a quick assessment has are done to assess how much damage has been done and how much area is being affected. So under the quick assessment, there are certain rescue operations which takes place. Okay. Now to prevent loss of life and injury through search and rescue, forewarning or responding and aiding activities are using public and private resources. So there are what do you call government organizations like Home Guard, then NDRF, and even army personals and police personals. Apart from that, NGOs are also working in search and rescue operations. This is to optimize the use of resources in conducting the SAR, so that we identify certain group of organizations and authorities to involve into search and rescue operations, so that we can control the resources that has been used. So not all NGOs or all the government departments involved into search and rescue operations. Now, minimizing search duration and crew risk duration in SAR missions are very important. So it is very important to minimize the search duration and crew risk duration in search and rescue operations. All right. Now, search and rescues are like rescue includes trained personals and volunteers. So we need volunteers from the community to help people look for the victims. There are tool depends on their availability and need of the situation. For example, storms or earthquake damage more required to requires more tool for lifting up debris, whereas flood damage may require boats, ropes, and preferences. Now, what happens here is that tools like will differ from one disaster to another disaster, like in earthquakes and cyclonic storms or storms, or wherever there's a destruction or structural destruction, you will require heavy lifting machineries for lifting up the debris. All right. Whereas in flood damages, you will require equipments related to boats. You will require boats to go into areas where the water is very high. Then you will require ropes to reel in the victims, or the tools and other materials into the boats. Then you have you will need torches if you are going into a building, collapsed building, for a rescue. And that whereas in fire accidents also, if there is a fire accident, you will require a different tool sets, like you will require to fire extinguishers, you will require fire kit and mask and all those, oxygen mask, all those things in fire accidents. Similarly, if you go and see a chemical disaster that has happened, you will require a chemical mask wearing, and then you will require some hazmat suit, uh, and other combating material, maybe hammer, ropes and ladders and everything, depending on the situation, you the requirements are there. So these inventories are to be kept in the part of preparedness. While we are preparing plans, we should always have an inventory check, that what all things we have at the time to combat the disaster. Now, time may be very limited for some victim. The first 24 hours of a disaster has been called as the golden day or golden hour. This period during which injured or trapped victims have 80% chance of survival if rescued. All right. So there is an 80% chances of victims surviving in the first 24 hours of the disaster. So this is the golden period where you can do, where you have to rescue the maximum number of people who are entrapped. All right. So the more delay you do, the more chances of loss of life will happen. Now, search and rescue types are, there are very types of search and rescue. You are doing search and rescue from air, like air operations are done where helicopters are used and other air, air mediums are used for observation also, like UA, unarmed air vehicle, where you have a quick survey that is also used to see where you need to disseminate your rescue teams. The search and rescue operation involving planes, helicopters, etc. are observed in a or you can have a parachute or windstorm man, that means a hanging rope like things where the man is hanging for search and rescue from a top of the building, and those who are trapped in any danger which will need a medical aid. Suppose you are in landslide, somebody, a bus, or if somebody has fallen into a trench, for an example. So to rescue a person from a trench, what happens is helicopter or any other air vehicle is used to pick up the person from that trench, or maybe that person is injured so much or fractured, with fractured bone so much that they need an immediate medical assistance, else they will cease to live. Now, specialist army units do train exclusively to the air SAR teams, that is air search and rescue teams. So there are specialized army units who train these uh, search and rescue, air search and rescue teams to take parts and do their duties while rescuing the victims. Then we have coastal SAR. Coastal SAR is coastal search and rescue, usually involves in the land and water along the coastal lines. This is basically under the jurisdiction of coast guards. Now it includes the littoral area and includes the cliff and shoreline by, and actually in the water. So it is by the shoreline. The entire coastline it is in the hands of the what do you call, coast guards. The coast guards have a unit of search and rescue where they help evacuate people who are stranded in the ocean. So it may basically, this team is disseminated or activated during cyclonic storms or what do you call, tsunamis. So in this tsunami and cyclonic storms, there may be people who are stranded into ocean and will require an evacuation, air evacuation. So coast guards can also have an air evacuation or boat evacuation. They have boats and large liners of ships that can be used for evacuating. Therefore it includes the use of aircraft, helicopters, surface boats and submarine vessels, especially if it involves the littoral area of continents. Okay. Now fire search and rescue operations are basically when persons are trapped in fire areas with specialized equipment such as fire hydrant, clothes, and breathing apparatus. uh, Fire accidents are very grave. There can be fire coming out from any sources. Oil based fires are very difficult to extinguish. Electric fire is very difficult to extinguish because you cannot use water there. So fire fighting is a very tricky business, so you need specialized people for dealing up with the fire uh, accidents. Now, firefighters are trained and equipped to extinguish fires in all sort of environments, such as buildings, like offices, homes, also cars, and chemical fire are also. They also use chemicals to extinguish chemical fires. Any fire which has been started up by chemical accident can also be used, but they require a different fire type of fire extinguisher to use it. So they know how to use fire extinguisher, they know how to handle the water hydrant, because water hydrant has a lot of pressure that needs to be handled properly. So only firefighter men can do that. Their uniform is such that they are fire resistant and can withstand certain amount of heat and fire lapses. Now, they also usually train as a rescuer to rescue people from car accidents, collapsed buildings, several other hazardous and complex situations also are used in by the firefighters. So in urban setup, the firefighters are largely used for other rescue operations as well. All right. The mountains are. There are the rescue teams and group all over the world, and usually the member of a large mountain rescue council or association. So, mountain search and rescue operations are generally made by the mountain rescue council and association. So, there are those who are very well mountaineers, are part of good mountaineer groups. They are the part of these teams and council, and they indulge in activities of rescuing the people from these stranded mountain hazards and disasters. It is one of those which has which it is one of those groups which has even civilians and military personals also involved in it, apart from other international agencies giving aid to volunteer help the victims. Now, urban SAR. What is an urban SAR? Urban search and rescue operations are referred to as heavy urban search and rescue in locations where rescue of persons from collapsed buildings or other urban or industrial entrapments. Okay. Due to specialized nature of the work, most teams are multidisciplinary and include personnel from police, fire, emergency medical services. Okay, now urban search and rescue responders are also having basic training in instrumental, structural collapse, and also a danger associated with electrical wires, broken gas lines, and also other uh, uh, hazardous chemicals and matter for that year, because they are debate both mostly dealing with industrial areas and things dealing with urban setup. So in urban setup you have gas lines, other hazardous material like chemical industries can have hazardous material or any other thing. Then there is a electrical wire which can break off. So those electrical wiring also, they are somewhat were capable of handling them. Now, while earthquake operations, terrorist attacks, and other extreme weather such as tornadoes, cyclone, hurricane are also involved into urban star, where if like for example Mumbai, if Mumbai falling prey to any cyclones, uh, there the urban search and rescue operators will work in that Mumbai region, right? Because it's an urban setup. Now, ground SAR, where you have a ground search and rescue teams in search for persons who have become lost or injured in the during the disaster. In many cases, the victims are able to especially categorized and behavior predicted from group like lost of or long missing children. Now, deponent or suicidal people are also used or helped to overcome with the help of the ground search and rescue staff. The lost hikers and walkers are also helped by the SARS and other activities like you have providing medical assistance and basic nursing are also provided by the ground SAR. Now, so snows now are they involve a little more trained people dealing with alpine mountaineering and areas with a lot of snow clad regions, like where there is a chance of avalanches. So during the time of avalanche, what happens is they are rescued from suppose a few group of people, they have gone from mountaineering or hiking in a avalanche prone area and they got entrapped into avalanche. Then they are rescued by these teams because they are specialized, they know where to look for, how to look for. They also have some animals with them like dogs to search for the people who are entrapped under the snow. Now, SAR personals on and around the environment of snow or ice, such as frozen lakes and alpine mountains. These includes how to roll, crawl, or swim away from the snow or ice hole, and using many personals and ice rescue equipments used by the organization. So they are trained well to deal with extreme cold weather and conditions. They know how to crawl through the snow, how to swim through the icy water or ice holes, and use equipments in that extreme temperature. Now, rescue train to enter the frozen lakes or lake holes or reservoir with recover victims while participating method of weight distribution on the lakes. So there's a technique of when there is a lake is which is frozen. So what happens is you cannot put all your weight in one particular area. The layer of the frozen lake might crack and you may fall victim to the icy water below. So what you do is you develop a technique of distributing your weight over the ice layer over the lake. And this method are only they are only trained to they get this training to rescue the from those icy waters. Now, medical team, the in search and rescue operations, medical activation of medical team is very important. So there is a uh, activation of medical teams and services are initiated just immediately after the mouth of any disaster. There will be two teams which will be disseminated, like one team will be uh, going for the for working for the on-site assistance, and the other team will be working at the rescue centers where you have rehabilitating centers. So if you see at the time of earthquake, you will have two teams which will be disseminated. One medical team will be going to the areas which is affected by the earthquake, and there will be another team who are going to work at the makeshift camps where they are receiving the patients and victims from various other locations. Okay. So during the disaster, the priority is usually to treat casualty and the sick or injured. The disaster like earthquake are often involve the management of mass casualty, which is normally required for the following activities, like this: search and rescue and first aid. So the first team of a medical team that has gone on the site, they provide the first aid. Okay, so along with the search and rescue teams, the medical teams which have gone there providing first aid, they also involved into the process of triaging. Triaging is a process where you are tagging the patient depending on the severity of their injuries. You know, those who are not very severely injured, or have little bit of gaushes, they can be treated with first aid and uh, let go of to for a secured places. But there will be a victim which requires more than a first aid. Maybe they have got injuries which is deep enough to be seen for a medical attention, like injury like a cut, a deep cut where you are profusely bleeding off. So you will require medical assistance there. You will require a doctor to stitch up your deep cut so that you do not profusely bleed out. So and but apart from that, you do not need more than that. So you have a yellow triage. The first triage is the green triage, where you do not need any medical assistance. Little bit of first aid will do with it. Then the second one is yellow triage, where you need medical assistance, but it is of not a very grave intensity or life threatening situation. Then you have a red triage, where red band, where the victim is gravely injured and require medical attention for a longer period of time. They may require more attention, as for example, maybe they require not only first aid, but at the site of the rescue, but will be requiring a hospitalization. So that type of patients are again quickly disseminated towards the hospitals and medical centers to be taken care of. Okay, then you have black triage. A black triage or black band to the victims are given when these victims are morbid, or or on the they are they cannot be saved furthermore. On the verge of they are dying on the so they needs they need medical attention, but not at the very at the immediate instances. They do not need medical attention. All they need to is need to disseminate the morbid body to the mortuary. So these are the colors of triaging, that is green. Four colors of triaging, that is green, yellow, red, and black. Green being the people or victims being falling in the safe zone. Then yellow being people falling into uh, you know uh, little bit of medical attention, but they do not need hospitalization. Red is the triage where the victim will survive but needs hospitalization. So apart from giving first aid, they also need medical services at medical centers. Then black being the triage where the patient has already died or on the verge of dying and cannot be done anything. So there are some patients who are so morbidly injured that they cannot be rescued. So they directly move them to a center where either to the mortuary, or a center where some care has been are taking, maybe there is a chance of survival. Now, redistribution of the patient between the hospitals and the nursery have to be taken. So how do you identify where this patients are to be sent? So the triaging system, the tagging of these triage are very important for the redistribution of the patient. So because you cannot collect all the patients or all the victims into one area, it will cause a chaos. So instead of restricting this chaos, what you need is, you need to redistribute the patient. So on the first aid patients or will be given out to a nursery where only a little bit of first aid and medical attention is given, whereas these gravely injured patients will be directly moved on from the site to the medical services. Now health policies, now finalize emergency preparedness plan. So when we have an emergency preparedness plans, prepared hazard specific emergency plan, so we have to have a hazard specific emergency plan in context of medical assistance, in context of legal assistance, in context of financial assistance at every level, starting from the district level, starting from the local level to district level to state level and to the national level, and allocate the resources for preparedness and emergency response activities. Okay, now develop a team of doctors for mobile health services. We need to have a team of doctors for mobile health services, like that I have told you that there will be two teams which will be two mobile teams which will be disseminated at the regions of uh, disaster. One team will be for the first aid along with the search and rescue operations teams, and the other one will assess the serious and grave injured people, where they will have a specialized group of doctors which including surgeons and medical specialists who are having a specialized idea about the medicines. So in then the doctors are doing their they will be giving their total potential of their specialized areas. Okay, so similarly it also works in the time of any disaster, like even chemical disasters, doctor the team of medical assistants are disseminated, and in biological disasters, supposingly like in case of pandemic which is happening in now times, you have seen there are team of doctors and nurses who are disseminated into areas and localities for checking into the people who are getting sick due to COVID, and for even vaccination teams are also urging them to get vaccinated, so they require teams of doctors and nurses to to give medicines and medical assistance at the locations, and vaccination for dealing with COVID like situation or pandemic like situations. Okay, then this is what your medical assistance and policies will do. Now, compiling the list of health department assisted at the district level, which may include laboratories, X-ray machineries, surgery facilities, oxygen cylinders, ambulances, and all the related medical equipments. The capacity of private hospitals and service, public hospitals like civil hospitals has to be assimilated, like how many bedded hospital it is there, how many patient it can take up, or what is the influx of, if suppose there is a mass casualty, what is the influx of patient that this area this mm, place can handle. Okay, so the service centers, either the health service center will either have a well established bedded system, where you have seen when there is a mass casualty, even in the situation of COVID, when the first wave came, then also the hospitals were struggling with providing the beds to the patient, and in second wave of COVID, the hospitals were again over burdened by the patients, and they were also not able to provide the beds to the patients. So we need, that's why we need the medical centers and hospitals to be assessed ki what is the amount of public pressure, or the pressure of mass casualty they can take. Okay, so there are certain hospitals who are well organized, for investigation into army hospitals, where they have large floor areas where they can adjust the patients of while during the disaster, any disaster, when there's a large influx of mass casualty coming in. They have these areas already allocated in case there's a mass casualty and we do not have the beds to provide to the patient in the main hospital area. They have the Froy area to be catered for as a medical center. A temporary medical center can be established by the institution. So organizing and training the first aid for health committee members also has to be assisted by the the hospitals and the medical centers. Now NGOs in the districts also have should have some training in assisting the medical first aids. Then you have health hygiene that has to be maintained. So during any disaster, there is always a threat of hygiene, maintenance of hygiene. Why? Because of there could be dead body lying around. There could be a contaminated water. So all these things can result up to giving a furthermore diseases and developing diseases into the victims who are not yet gravely uh, sick or injured. Okay. So now this is a healthcare system. This is a one of the plan of how it works. Medical team works. So from a hazard location, what happens is, so along with the search and rescue operations, the first aid team disseminates the patients. Okay, that is this. They come into an Froy area. This is what you call a medical area where you triage your patients and you see whether the patient is stabilized or not, what kind of medical assistance it is required, and then they are moved from that medical post to the main center. They are evacuated to health centers, or maybe if the victim is deceased, then they will be moved on to the what to the mortuaries. Now, patient, it shows the this arrow shows the inflow of the patient. Okay, this arrow shows the movement of the vehicles that is required. That means for evacuation of the patient, you require vehicles like ambulances and other vehicles to evacuate the patient from the triage area. Okay, then you have the this dotted line shows the access restricted for search and rescue operations. So this area, it is only restricted for the search and rescue teams which are working in this zone. Okay, now the search and rescue teams will not allow any other civilians to enter these areas, so that they do not also have to cater for the other persons who is entering the danger line. Now again you have this gray dotted line shows the public access. So it's the public access is on the fringes of the hazardous zones. All right, now red, black, green and yellow we have already talked about is the color of the triage. Now disease early warning system. So we need to have an early warning system for dissemination of any disease, like WHO and WHO and other medical organizations, they time and again they disseminate the warning system that by this time we are going to face a third wave. Like for example, there was already a warning for after the first wave of COVID influx of patients. There was a warning by IMA that there is going to be another influx of patients coming very soon. That means the third wave. If we do not take up proper precaution, there is going to be a threat of the second wave coming up. So that has already happened because people had gone desensitive towards the social distancing and following the all the regime to avoid getting influenced by the COVID. Okay. So what happens here now, because this second wave has already been warned by the IMA and WHO. There is also a warning of third wave coming up. So, and it is also predicted that there is going to be a third wave going to come very fast, because now we have again started opening up the market and other economic zones where people are not following the proper guidelines issued by the authorities. Okay, so we need to have an early warning system, so that the people are aware that this is going to happen. Now, the main communicable diseases are like can be transmitted by contact and acute respiratory infections, for like example, COVID. Now, vector transmission disease can be caused by the mosquitoes, so we need to follow up the hygiene during the uh, you know uh, disaster. Why? Suppose there's a flood like situation, so flood will result into stagnation of water. Stagnation of water will result into the breeding ground for mosquitoes. The breeding ground of mosquitoes will transmit the diseases, vector borne diseases like dengue and malaria, kala azar, then you have Japanese encephalitis, and many more vector borne diseases are due to the stagnant water. Okay, so these vector borne diseases has to be cut down. So what you can do is you can uh, you know uh, uh, treat the stagnant water. You can flow out the stagnant water, so that any of the locality do not fall prey of the diseases coming out from water. Now, disease can also be transmitted through contaminated water. Like by consuming the contaminated water, we can contract many diseases like cholera, typhoid. These are certain diseases which is happens due to the consumption of contaminated water. And when you contaminate get consume these contaminated water, and you get infected by cholera or typhoid, what happens is the patients or the victims will lose out a lot of body fluid and will require severe medical attentions, and without medical attention it cannot be cured. All right. Now, preventing and reducing the outbreak of communicable diseases. How can you prevent and reduce the outbreak of communicable diseases? Preventing communicable diseases and outbreak, intervention at the source. It needs the intervention at a source. So, what is the source of these outbreak of diseases? That has to be intervened first. So, like in case, let's not talk about COVID now. Let's go into vector-borne disease or a disease like bird flu. Okay, so in recent year, this year itself, it has been seen that the bird flu has started jumping into the human periphery, or human body started affecting human beings. So there have been strands of bird flu which has been found in affecting the human health conditions. So what they do, they intervene in the areas where poultry farming is done. So it is obviously the bird flu will affect poultry. So you will intervene in either vaccinating your poultry, or completely destroying the poultry product, so that this is not consumed by the humans and affecting their health in that process. So bird flu is a yearly phenomena which is seen time and again, affecting the southern part of our country, and some of the northern part also, but mostly it has been seen that it has been affected by the southern part of the country. And this bird flu comes into the country from the migratory birds. Now these migratory birds are naturally started developing immune against the bird flu, but the poultry birds, the birds who we keep as a domestic for the domestic purposes, are not immune to the disease. So it will infect the domestic birds, and that symptoms can be seen in domestic birds but not in a wild birds. So that intervention has to be taken. Similarly, you have vector borne diseases. You need an intervention at the root cause, at the source of the problem. So for vector borne diseases like dengue and malaria, what is the root source? the stagnant water, the water body will be the source of the diseases. So you need to curtail of the sources from the source itself. All right, so you clear out the water stagnation, you clear out the breeding of the mosquitoes. Now, intervention at a biological stage are also taken up, like biological stage in case there is a technique of which has been developed eventually, that the female mosquitoes, we know that female mosquitoes are the cause of spread of dengue and malaria, even Kala-Azar. So the female mosquitoes can be biologically altered in such a way that they cannot lay eggs, they cannot reproduce furthermore, and hence reducing their population completely. And there can be other biological factors like influencing certain other biological component into the uh, vector, that they will not be able to transmit the disease at all. Now, the intervention at the aftermath of the disease, the managing the communicable disease can be a very difficult thing. So, which is happening right now in COVID situation, this is uh, a communicable disease, and the aftermath management is very difficult to handle because it suddenly influx with the large number of patients. Now, so communicable disease is well handled when you have the problem dealt at the source. Now, level of intervention, so the primary intervention, secondary intervention, and tertiary intervention. So these are the level of interventions and can be defined as a biological clinical manifestation in of an infection. For example, immunization and sanitation, as well as awareness education on the basis of hygiene and sanitation method. The secondary intervention means preventing harmless form of diseases from developing into more serious form of disease. Okay, that can also responsible for death and other medical complications. The use of oral rehydration salt are used, like ORS, like in case of you have water contamination, and this water contamination is a like typhoid and diarrhea is a communicable disease because it transmits through contaminated water. So suppose you have this diarrhea and typhoid waste has gone into water and contaminating it, and somebody else consuming that same source of water, it will result into the person will also fall victim to this type of disease. And there will be a problem of hydration in the body, so they need oral hydration. In oral hydration you require ORS. In ORS, what you have sugar, you have salt, and other essential minerals to retain water in your body. So that hydration is very important. Similarly, it has also been seen in many other communicable disease also, the hydration becomes a very difficult to be handled. So many a times the patient dies of dehydration rather than the disease itself. So in COVID also it has been seen that patients are falling acutely dehydrated, and hence the medicine or the medical team struggle with it. So they are also continuously suggesting that you must have a healthy oral hydration, so that your body is hydrated and your body fluid is running properly so that you can recover from the disease. Now, tertiary intervention is it covers the rehabilitation following the illness, that is social reintegration, nutritional rehabilitation for after the uh, for example, after the measles, you need to have a food shift of food source. Like in COVID like situation, it is said that you must have a high protein diet. Why? High protein diet will help you fight the disease. So it is recommended that every day you must have 2 eggs. Okay, in the morning and then in the night you must have 2 eggs, because the this animal protein is helping the patients to develop more what do you call uh, blood in their system, more immunity, it is providing more immunity to against the disease. So that is a tertiary intervention where you are suggesting to alter your food choices. Similarly, every disease will have a different alteration or and rehabilitation of the food choices. Now, curative actions. What are the curative actions that can be taken in case of communicable diseases? The use of intervention for paid assessment of communicable, rapid assessment of the communicable diseases in the emergency. That is immunization. First of all, you need to get immunization. Then you have to have tests which is to be carried out in the field. Then um, chemical exfoliation, pneumatic exploration, then health education. Then chemical exfoliation is basically checking the chemical compositions in your body, that is the hormonal composition of your body, how well you are dealing with it. And therapeutic exploration, it means that how much oxygen is there in your body, how much breathing capacity you have. So those things that has to be, so your chest is x-rayed and all those things are taken up. Now other health education is like what are the rest of the health important measurements that you have to take. See, this is a table which shows the description, giving the description of cause, sign and symptoms and treatment. So in malaria, what is the cause? The disease is caused by the parasite which is living in the uh, mosquitoes. So malaria and dengue, anopheles and aegypti mosquitoes are these types of are responsible for malaria and dengue. And the symptoms will be, in malaria you will have shiver and fever in the night, pain in the joints, you will have vomiting feeling, a nausea, enlargement of the stomach, spleen, enlargement of your stomach will also happen in malaria. Whereas in dengue you will have fever, you will have headache, you will have joint pains, you will have bleeding nose and vomiting along with it. And also you will start your blood platelets will start falling off. All right. Now the treatment is, the medicine which is given is an antibiotic medicine, uh, commonly given in malaria. The medicine is uh, chloroquine. Chloroquine is given in malaria. It's a malaria treatment medicine which is to treat the parasite in the surviving in the liver system of our body. In dengue also there are medicines, antibiotic medicines, and blood platelets are given to cure the or treat the disease. Similarly, in cholera, you have, what happens in acute intestinal infection happens. That means you fall victim to diarrhea and dysentery. In diarrhea and dysentery, you have, runny diarrhea, runny stool, then vomiting, and body becomes prey to dehydration. Then when your body is getting dehydrated, you need to have oral hydration processes. In oral hydration processes, you have ORS to be consumed. All right. Now, early disease warning system requires a very in-depth investigation ki how these diseases is going to, infest or spread among the community. That has to be analyzed. Okay, so once it has been analyzed, then it can be the information can be disseminated to the people that this disease will progress in this pattern, and by this time we will have a peak of or the influx of the patients. So it is also beneficial for the medical or the people who are working in the medical sector, so that they are well prepared to handle the influx of the patients. The assessment of the health services are also required. In the health services, you assess the number of beds, equipments, and personals who are there who will be able to cater for the victims. Okay. Now the use of use of interview as a rapid assessment method. So we use interviews of various people. How many what is the population, what is the demographic composition, and in case of there's a any disaster, where will you go, which is the nearest hospitals which is there. So based on the people's response, the nearest hospitals they choose to go to, uh, depending on that you can inform the hospitals that this area locality people will choose to come to your set up and for the relief, for the as a medical assistance. Okay. And apart from all these things, government departments and NGOs are also working in assisting the public to combat the medical issues. Okay. Then relief management includes food assisting food, safe drinking water, safe shelter are also assisted by the relief management. It is also taken care that there is no shortage of food and safe water which is being provided to the victims. Okay. And this with this we are on the end of the lecture, that we how search and rescue not only helps in evacuating and rescue the people from the hazardous zone and disaster, but it also helps in providing assistance at various level, at providing first aid, at providing and transportation to the safer places, or rehabilitation places. They provide that transportation also. All right. So it initiate in the process, the initial or the search and rescue operation, if it is done properly, it initiate into the recovery stage of the disaster, which inhabits rehabilitation and reconstruction of the what do you call of the area which is falling victim to the disaster. Okay. So resettlement of the families and the community is very important. Now resettlement program should be beyond the supervision of building up houses. It should be building up the livelihood and economic activities, coming back to the normalcy. Okay. So we need to identify the risk prone zones, and then initiate the activity based on the risk and the vulnerability maps that has been identified after the mark of the disaster. All right. So, with this, we are finishing off our lecture, and tomorrow we are going to talk about its rehabilitation and reconstruction stage of disaster management.